Please, I can't breathe. Please, man. Please, man.
On May 25th, 46-year-old African-American George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis during an arrest for allegedly using a counterfeit bill. Police officer Derek Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes, while Floyd was handcuffed, lying face down, begging for his life, and repeatedly saying, "I can't breathe."
I can't breathe. Please, the name of it. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
His death sparked a worldwide movement that saw people rallying in cities around the world in solidarity with #Black Lives Matter. With an aim to create further awareness and understanding of the Black Lives Matter movement, I discussed with panelists about what this movement means. We discussed Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, and also touch on when children need to be educated on equality, as well as what we can do as individuals to make a difference.
As Black people, we just want to be ourselves, and I think that's what it's about. We want to be able to breathe, really. We want to be able to go out there and not have at the back of our mind that, okay, this person is being racist, or because it seems like we always have that at the back of our minds. It seems like we're always affected by, what's happening. It's a constant word in our heads. And I was saying, I did not really think of racism until I came to live in England, because, it wasn't around me. But I want to live normally. I don't want to have anything hanging over my head. And I think that's what this movement is about. Slavery is over. It has been over for a very, very long time. So I shouldn't still be seen as a slave. It's so, sad to hear that actual human beings were counted as 3/5 human. So we weren't regarded as complete human beings before. We were partly animal to some people. And that's not normal. We can't have that today. So I think that's what it's about, getting our lives back.
So you talked about slavery. Abolishing slavery was the first fight for Black people to gain rights in the United States of America. That was the first fight. The second fight was the civil rights era, where the likes of Martin Luther King and co fought for African Americans for the right to vote, for the right to be considered as Americans. They had gone to fight for their country in wars past, but still couldn't come back to the United States of America and receive the rights that other American counterparts, their white colleagues, were receiving. And it was another era in fighting for justice and really pushing the agenda for African Americans. At the third stage is the creation of the Black Lives Matter movement, which for me is an organization or a movement that was created by young African Americans to fight the injustices of the current state, the systematic oppression that they've been facing in the last 15, 20, 30, 40 years. People have spoken about slavery being something that has long gone, but what slavery did was that it allowed for laws and rules to be created in the United States of America, and maybe even parts of the Western society, where Black people systematically have not been able to access the same type of rights and freedoms that their white counterparts have received. And now Black Lives Matter, coming into the 20th century, is using social media, is bringing in allies from various races and various people from various communities to speak out against some of the injustices that we haven't seen, and more recently through the advent of social media and mobile phones, to now use those tools to fight for the rights of African Americans and Black people around the world. And I think it's a reflection that we're now seeing in Europe and other parts of the world, where people are now speaking that yes, Black lives do matter, and yes, equality should be what everybody in the world should have. In summary, that's what I believe Black Lives Matter is.
It's being addressed as in most people that are not even aware are now becoming aware. So there's, for me, I think there's this consciousness now that this is what is happening and it needs to be addressed. I mean, colonialism, slavery, and all that, it's long gone. It's over. What we have now is mental slavery and systematic abuse.
Well, for me, the Black Lives Matter movement, I understand it in two ways. First of all, there's the actual human rights campaign, which is against violence and systematic racism towards Black people, especially in the Western world and across some areas in Europe as well. And, you know, it's a lot of oppression there and they feel that. But I feel that even more when it comes to the hashtag like Black Lives Matter and the phrase Black Lives Matter when it's used, I feel that's more of a global campaign, whereas that's a part for every African across the world to tag into one unique idea or one unique purpose of, look, across history, sure, everyone has a story of how it all turned out. Some might be a bit biased, some might be a bit horrific. Everyone knows slavery was involved. Everybody knows you gave independence, but you didn't give us our cultural resources or anything you took back. There's a lot of sides to the story, but I feel like the main thing about Black Lives Matter, apart from the movement against systematic racism, but also to understand that worldwide and in the race of human beings, not races, one race of human beings, there has been a very large, significant unjust done against Black-skinned people. And in every way, everybody feels that trial or trouble. In every way, they've experienced it for themselves. Black Lives Matter is that one thing that they can use as a voice to say, yeah, we need to face this now before it gets any worse.
Thank you, Sadiq. Ade mentioned this is something that has been happening we have been aware of for a very long time. So why is it now that everybody is paying attention?
I think it's impossible not to shriek at watching a video of about 9 minutes long where a man is being murdered in full view of the entire world. This was happening in front of every single person. Yes, we've seen videos in the past where police officers have fatally shot Black Americans and Black men in America, but in some cases, we've also always had the impression that we didn't know what led up to it, or perhaps the police force have somehow come up with a different explanation that the person was trying to reach out for the gun or something was happening. So there were always some vague circumstances in the past that people just couldn't explain. But unfortunately for the police force in this example, from the beginning till the end, there's been footage of how the gentleman reacted and how the police officers reacted till the last breath he took. And I think every single person around the world, regardless of whether you're Black, white, Asian, people saw, a man lose their breath pleading for their life. And I think that was what touched the nerve. The Black Lives Movement had started a couple of years ago about shouting about police brutality and systematic oppression around the world. However, the voice just became louder. And I think during this time as well, just to wrap up, whilst CNN was covering the events and the demonstrations that was taking place in America, other events were taking place live on television as we watched. The CNN reporter, Omar Jimenez, was arrested in full view of every single person around the world, basically for being a Black reporter, as his other counterpart, white reporter, was left by the roadside and not even touched. So unfortunately, this was happening consistently in the full view of the rest of the world. And he just kept on buttressing the point that, the Black Lives Matter movement and African Americans have continued to say. It was just the fact that we saw it and continue to see it.
To add something. I was around when Rodney King riots happened, and this was 20 years ago. And, we keep seeing these videos that come out occasionally, and everybody knows that there's many more cases of this that happens that don't get caught on video. So to keep seeing them over and over and over again, the ones that actually get out, when you see one like this that's so long and so graphic, I think it really just sort of makes you realize, like, this is one that we're seeing, but there's so many others that we're not seeing.
I feel that people are changing as well. Because in this whole struggle issue, understanding, a lot of white people, especially the younger generation, are even disagreeing with their parents over this same issue. So a lot of people, we are now more united in this cause. So it's not really about just Black people fighting for their rights. It's now about more white people now saying that this thing is wrong and we are not going to be part of it. This is so glaring. The news media wouldn't have shown us everything. They would have edited it to suit them. But there was just one or two innocent people that were recording and sharing. So now we are not depending on what the news is telling us. We are now depending on what individuals are also posting out there.
Shelby Steele said that the Black community is unique from other communities. Our culture is unique from other communities because we are the only community that caters to the bottom denominator of our society. Now, let me explain what that means. It means to say that not every Black American is a criminal, not every Black American is committing crimes, but we are unique in that we are the only people that fight and scream and demand support and justice for the people in our community that are up to no good. And I want to be very clear, what I'm saying is not any defense for Derek Chauvin. I hope Derek Chauvin gets the justice that he deserves to be implemented upon him, and that the family of George Floyd deserves justice for the way that he died. But I also am not going to accept the narrative that this is the best the Black community has to offer. You can say the media is portraying it like he was just getting his life together after, being released in 2014 following that incident. He was just getting his life together and moved and was going to start afresh. I'd like to believe all of those things, and there's a gap, and he never got in trouble for 5 years until this incident when the police were called on him again. But you are defying common sense to believe that this person suddenly became an exemplary character but happened to be high on fentanyl and methamphetamine and trying to use a bill, a fake bill, to purchase something. And so, in my opinion, George Floyd was a criminal. Black conservatives get ahead because we don't subscribe to this narrative. Because you're not going to catch me outside trying to grab a TV pretending that it's because a martyr named George Floyd got killed. Okay? I'm a big believer that no matter what color you are, you do stupid things, you win stupid prizes.
To be honest with you, George Floyd didn't ask to be a martyr. George Floyd didn't ask to be the face of the movement. George Floyd lost his life, unfortunately, at the hands of the police force. So George Floyd just becomes the latest man in the line of many of African Americans that have been murdered. So in order to help with this demonstration and the noise that is, we have to be honest with ourselves. The recent movement that has occurred in the last 2 weeks stems from the sad and shocking loss of Mr. George Floyd. So his name is the most recent in memories of everybody around the world, hence why that face is in front of everybody. And again, Candace Owens has shown herself not to be someone that speaks positively about the general public, the general African-American experience. And that video is an example of how she has, in the past spoken.
One of the, I watched the whole video. I mean, the video got something like 4 million views. And one of the things she goes on about is the statistics on, how many Black people versus white people are killed by police. And it's a fact in the US that more white people are killed by police than Black people. The problem is that the system for dealing with that was created by white people. So to create a system to deal with this that wasn't created by white people, we created the justice system, and it's largely dominated by white people. So, that's the whole point of the Black Lives Movement is, of course, all lives matter, but right now we need a way to, to fix this system that was created by white people, so that it doesn't favor them, and so that Black people have a voice.
Just to add a little bit onto that, first of all, she said that the one thing that inspired her was, Chubby Steele's theory about how, Black people are the only people that come around to gather support when they feel there has been an injustice. And why not? I mean, if you look at the history of time and what's been done, yes, we have suffered the most injustice. Slavery is something, I mean, I was baffled the other day when I found out that, you know, slavery can be abolished, but there are people that are still getting relief funds from the government because they were linked to some plantation or somebody or granddaddy that owned the plantation at some time. So there's a possibility that taxpayers' money is going to give these people those relief funds for the business they lost those years ago. But then isn't part of that taxpayer money Black Americans' money? When she said, you know, she doesn't support George Floyd as a martyr, I mean, let's look at the definition of the word, you know. This is when someone is killed over a belief. Now, if, just like Chokwe said, he didn't choose this. We believe in the injustice that was done to him, the same way we believe in the injustice that has been done to Black-skinned people across history since the beginning of time. So his cause that we saw that for some people is a gross public execution, we feel, yes, this guy shouldn't have had to go this way, regardless whatever the reason, regardless his history, regardless the past, he didn't have to go this way over what he was being arrested for, supposedly.
You can also judge a society by how they treat the most unfortunate. And he was someone who was unfortunate. He had drug problems, you know, in and out of the criminal justice system. You know, he's someone that should have been, you know, treated like everybody else.
Can I add something?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't agree with the rest of what she said, but in my personal opinion, I think I agree with her to an extent of the face of something, because before the Judge one happened, I think there was even another girl that they barged into her house and killed her in her house. I mean, I have a 14-year-old, and I'm just trying to relate it to the younger people. And what they understand is that, oh, you know, he was killed by the police. And my son was like, well, what was he doing? You know, how did it happen? And there was some news about a check or money or something. They're not all criminals. It's not every time we go into a shopping thing that the police follows us around. It's not. We're just not that. We own businesses too. We are very, very positive. And I do understand there's a lot of bias, really. And what you don't want is a young child to ask you certain questions that I couldn't even explain. Because when my son was like, what did he do though? I would have preferred to explain like, oh, poor guy, he was just sitting on his own and they just came. Then, okay, there was a mistake about something in the shop and
he did nothing.
You know, so
Madam, that's what you should try to explain to your child, that he did nothing. The reason why he got involved in the first place, as Black men, regardless of what the initial story was, we are consistently targeted. If he had entered a shop as a Black man, he could have been targeted. We've seen examples of people doing absolutely nothing. The story that you're talking about, the $20 bill or $20 check, till tomorrow has not been confirmed. That was the allegation. The owner of the restaurant that called the police has now said that if he had known that this was going to lead up to that, he would not have called, because the confirmation was not 100% in the first place. That's what you should tell your son. It's not that because of his past, regardless of what his past had been, nobody cares about that. What we should really be looking at and to be able to fight for justice is what really he died for. He was murdered unjustly because he was a Black man. That's the message, madam, that we need to pass to our young people, because I have experienced being selected, and our young sons and young daughters will be in that position. If we do not prepare them well, we will put it in their minds that all of the people that were running away from police or the people that were resisting arrest deserve to get shot. No, they don't.
I understand what you're saying, Victoria, but it doesn't matter if he was being arrested for fraud. The point is, and I think is what we should explain to everyone, that it just doesn't matter what the situation is. Nobody deserves to die that way. Absolutely nobody. Now, moving on to this whole debate that is going on now with Black Lives versus All Lives Matter. Before we go ahead and discuss this, let's just have a quick look at this clip.
We all agree all lives matter. But I had a really poignant experience tonight when I was putting my kids down to bed that lent the words for why Black Lives Matter. So usually Mila and I put our kids to bed, we read them a book, and our daughter always gets to go first. And tonight, as we were reading her book, my son says, wait, why don't I get to go first? And Mila said, because girls go first. And he said, yeah, but boys go first. And I looked at him, I said, no, girls go first. And I said, you know why girls go first? For you and me, girls go first. And the reason why is, for some boys, girls don't get a go at all. And so for you and me, girls go first. So when it comes to Black Lives Matter, I think what folks that are writing All Lives Matter need to understand is that for some people, Black lives don't matter at all. So for us, Black Lives Matter. So while you may have the best intentions in saying all lives matter, remember, for some people, Black lives don't matter at all.
Yeah, I think what I mentioned before is we have a justice system that works for white people. I mean, it was created by white people. It works for us. And that's why Black Lives Matter is so important, because, they are not being served by this system.
Thank you, Rich. That's what you take.
Yeah, I think it's not a level playing field. Yeah, that's why we cannot particularly embrace all lives matter, even though all lives do matter. The Black people have been served a very bad plate over the years. All lives do matter, but Black Lives Matter is a message. It's a message. It's not just a slogan. So, and that's what's on the table at the moment. We're not saying that all lives don't matter, but Black Lives Matter, it's a message we're sending now.
Okay, kind of saying all lives matter, includes everybody, includes Asians and Blacks and whites and everyone, right? So if we push the message all lives matter, wouldn't then that just automatically mean that includes Black people?
When you say all lives, it's not a general thing. We're trying to make a point. So all lives matter, no arguments. But now we're trying to make a point.
So for me, I feel like, if you're going to have a voice, your voice has to come from some kind of reasoning. So I come from a world where I'm half Black, half white, because my father's Nigerian, my mother's English. So when I'm in the UK and in European countries, I'm seen as a Black person. But when I'm in Nigeria and other African countries, I'm seen as a foreigner. Now, when they see me as a foreigner, it's usually one of two things. It's either they feel there's that I have my white privileges, which I have access to. So people want to be nice to me, they want to be kind to me, they want to show me around. Then there's also the feeling of distaste, in the sense that, what am I doing in their country? Why am I there? But for me, I'm one of them, because my upbringing has been as an African, and I've been to England where I was a kid, and there were young kids calling my father the N-word right in front of their parents, kids that I was probably a year older than, and I was 3 years old. So I feel like all lives matter. All lives matter. But let us not forget that this is the problem we're talking about right now is like everyone here is saying in this group, there shouldn't be a reason why anybody should be hated on because they have black skin. There shouldn't be any reason why anybody should think a black man is a fifth or a three-fifths a man. We have across time proven that we can excel, proven that whether in athletics, whether in academics, whether in engineering, whether in even aeronautics, we have something to say. Guess what? America had a black president. We are no lesser. So we're saying that we haven't come this far to say that we should still be hated on for the color of the skin. And all lives matter it's true. It is true. There is nothing that says that it is not. But the same way we should say all lives matter is to let's now look at the lives that have been affected the most worldwide. That's the life of the black people.
Thank you, Sadiq. Okay, so now moving on to what do we feel that the media can do to help, aid in pushing out this message more? Is the media doing enough, or is there more that can be done? I'll go to you.
I think I've got to give some bit form of kudos to media outfits and platforms like CNN, who have made conscious efforts to ensure that they have kind of displayed what was going on to the rest of the world, invited credible people to have conversations, open conversations about what was happening and what has been happening to black people, particularly in America and in other places in the world. The media is a very strong tool in displaying images to the world. The oppression of black people around the world, including Africans, African Americans, I think has been aided largely by the media. Perception in movies, in songs, in films, in documentaries, the way black people have been perceived has been one of the reasons why, in some cases, young people that are being raised today that are, maybe white people that have racist behaviors to them, they have either picked these behaviors up from their homes or have picked those perceptions up from how they have seen black people portrayed in recent times. The media is a very powerful tool, and I think nowadays what they need to do is that as long as we're watching media platforms in the world where we don't see enough representation of diversity, that is a subtle message of trying to say black people cannot do the job. So they have to start looking inwards to what they're portraying on the screen. We need to see a lot more of us doing those jobs. That will help to push the narrative forward. When there's an injustice against a black person or whoever around the world, let the media showcase the unbiased point of view. The 8-minute 46 seconds that people filmed on their phone should be exactly what the media broadcasts, not edited forms that tells a completely different story. So the media has to be held accountable, they have to be honest, and they have to tell the true stories and reflect the audience that they serve. That's the job that I believe they have.
I feel it is consistency of the truth. So now we're at the time where people can see what's happening at the first value. Thank God for COVID. At the same time, COVID, why? But now our eyes are open to see what's going on out there live in front of us. So what we need is consistent of this, like from the newscasters to the social media to anybody who calls himself a reporter, a journalist, a broadcaster. You people are the best equipped to find out the information. You are the best equipped to show us whose perspective, how many lines to the story there are. So what we just need is consistency of the truth, not for black people or for Hispanic people, but for everyone, for the world at large. I mean, okay, so we've all had the war against Al-Qaeda, we've had the war against ISIS, we've had the war against Boko Haram, but I mean, like, KKK is still in America. There's a lot of things that have led to this systematic racism where it's in the foundation. So you know that it all started out of ignorance because it was brought down by ignorance people thinking that one human being is lesser than another. So the social media needs to shed light on this. It needs to let people know that we need to unlearn and relearn what we know. We need to look at another human being, regardless of the color of their skin, as an equal human being as I am. And we need to point out the problems where these are, not just for Black people alone, but against any other minority in the world. Because the truth is we're all equal.
Thank you, Sadiq. Now, moving on to when is it the right time to start speaking to our children about equality? You know, Victoria, you said earlier, you know, you had your 14-year-old son asking you, you know, who is this? What's all this about? I've seen some tweets from some friends saying, you know, they have like their 5-year-old, 6-year-olds saying, who's Judge Floyd? You know, what's Black Lives Matter? So if they're already asking at such a young age, when is the right time to start educating kids about this? Do you think?
Yeah, I think as early as, let's say 3, because that is when the child's formative years in discerning instruction and understanding certain things. And what we should be very, very careful with is not teaching them how to hate, but teaching them more of tolerance and how to state facts.
I've got 3 children. The older 2 are girls. The third one is 11, and he's the boy. And with everything happening, you know, I cannot tell you now that I've had that conversation. I haven't still. But I've just been a little more attentive to his feelings and reactions to it. And if there's something I've done is to further enforce him being sure of who he is. Because being sure of who you are goes a long way. I haven't deciphered how to tell him that, look, be careful, you're a Black boy. I know I've made a statement to him once that say you have to work hard so that you can succeed. The undertone to that was that, you know, white people have a better advantage. But I didn't know how to say it, honestly. Because I'm thinking these are children. This is a child, you know. I cannot say I'm not going to have that conversation, but I haven't. So for me, I can't really answer that question because I'm still seeing my boy as who he is. And he has a very calm life. I'm feeling okay. What do I tell him to disrupt his nice life? But I know that there's a need somewhere. Don't get me wrong.
Thank you, Data. Going to Sadiq, did your parents ever have the discussion with you?
Funny enough, like I cannot recall any time where they specifically sat me down to talk to me about disparities between how people see each other and how, you know, if you're this, you're this, if you're that, you're that. But, you know, if I were to answer the question, unfortunately, I don't have children yet, but I will one day. But I'd like to believe that teaching children, it starts from birth. Because the first way the child learns is they emulate what they see and they pick up habits from what you're observing right in front of them. So first of all, if you think about it that way, then it starts with you as a person. You know, when you have your child there, first of all, you have to reflect that change. And when you're talking about inequality, we're not just talking about Black and white. We're talking about male and female. We're talking about people that might be handicapped versus people that are not handicapped. We're talking about, you know, at the bare essence of inequality. And when you emulate that behavior in front of your child, they pick it up. From the moment I think your child has cognitive thinking, whether most likely around 3, like Victoria said, and when they keep on getting older, I feel you need to make them aware to, you know, treat everyone just, motivate good culture, good behavior, try and groom a good person, but also put them in the path, provide the information and the links to the resources they need to go into. Not just for the sake of knowing their heritage and their roots, but the roots of the world itself. Not just people from your side, but everyone. Try to understand everyone. Look into how the world itself is today. Look at what happened across time. And then I feel as the world will play, that you have to give the child the leeway to form their own opinion in life. You know, all any good parent can pray to do is their best to guide and provide everything they can for a teacher for their child to see the things they need to learn from life. But I think, you know, it starts with being that change itself and emulating that change yourself, so that from being around you, they take the time to learn that from you and portray it to people around them as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with Sadiq. You know, you don't talk to your kids about racism, you show them from your actions from birth, you know, that it's unacceptable behavior. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we had some neighbors that came over and were hanging out at my parents' house, and the guy was saying things that were, you know, were racist. And when he left, my dad, he told me, he said, you know, that's unacceptable behavior, and you know, we won't invite them over here again, because that's, you know, not the type of example we want to set for our children. You know, and that was young. It was maybe 6 or 7, but I still remember it. So yeah, you teach your kids by showing them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. A lot of people have been saying, you know, with the way the whole community have come together, you know, on this, there's such unity that a lot of people think this is a historic moment. Like, this is the moment where things are actually going to change. Do we agree with that? Or do we think we'll be back like in a few months discussing this same issue, another person getting...
Well, we must remember that everything happening now did not happen overnight. It's not like this has brought a solution. I mean, it may take a while. But I noticed that in the past week since George Floyd's death, I've been walking around with a new kind of consciousness. And not a consciousness that something evil will happen to me or I have to be on the lookout. Not that kind of consciousness. A consciousness that, hey, I'm Black, and that's all right. I don't have to change my name. My name is Data. My parents called me Sophia as a middle name. And I remember when I came, I know people who gave themselves names just because they didn't want to answer their native born name because, oh, somebody will not know how to pronounce it or whatever. But every time somebody called me Data, I said, no, it's Data. And I noticed that in the past few days or weeks or so, I'm even more proud of being Black. And that is something. I'm not afraid of carrying my braids or having the edges of my hair that are not very long stick out. I'm just feeling more confident, to be honest. People, in fact, when I came into this country, I knew of people who would tell me not to braid my hair. It was too Blackish, you know, to wear. Yes, people change their name. Don't wear wigs just so that they can fit in. We are Black and we can fit in. Let's have that attitude. I am Black. In fact, I'm very Black and I can fit in. I want to announce my Blackness. And yes, I can fit in. They're all white people, but yes, I can fit in amongst them. That's the message.
I feel every journey has had its own time. You know, there was the Martin Luther one. There was, you know, Cassius Clay becoming Muhammad Ali. You know, there was even Nelson Mandela's walk to freedom. You know, there's been a time where there's been a significant moment for this particular issue. And I feel that now, like, people are beginning to realize that letting the origins of this issue to continue to be maintained are not right. So now you hear a lot of publications about taking Confederate statues down, and NASCAR saying that, you know, Confederate flags will no longer be allowed in their events. And, you know, a lot of people like doing these things in different areas where anything that has been there to subjugate or to demean the efficiency or the worth of a Black man, it should no longer be, it shouldn't stand there anymore. I mean, should they go into the Constitution and fix that to represent modern day man? Yes, they should. But it's a long journey. Even at home, we have black on black crime. Even in America, there's black on black. So it doesn't just end at the systemic thing. It ends at home. It ends here when you look at the person in the mirror. Even when the policeman, the local policeman, the moment they see you in a big flashy car, they begin to think you're a fraudulent person. You know, you're a yow boy. So there's no way you are even up to a civilized human being as them. But if they see a man in his regalia and his agbada, then they know, no, this one is chief. He knows what he's doing. We should respect him. We shouldn't have to class ourselves so much, and then even the world so much. We really need to learn to be open. Now that we're speaking up, we need to learn to speak up more, learn to be more open, know what your worth is, know how to defend yourself, not just physically, but first of all, verbally, and more important than that, spiritually. You know, reinforce yourself and know what you are and how you want to go about facing the world. But always remember that karma is real and you have to give what you expect. So be that thing that you want to see. And if we don't do that now, then when?
Special thanks to our panelists today, Sadiko Motosho, Data Sophia Adeshope Olajide, Rich Tanksley, and Victoria Inyama. And thank you to our viewers for staying tuned. My name is Immaculate Okore, and I've been your host today. Until next time, goodbye.
That Black Lives Matter, and it doesn't mean other lives do not matter. There is only one house burning, and we'll all pay attention to that house. It doesn't mean other houses are not important. They too are important, but this house is the one that is burning.